Hey folks, I am Dr. Anselino Davis, and this is Science and Perspective. This is following the first Blackbirders Week, and for me, there's something more important that I think is a much deeper discussion and much more challenging for most of us, and that's visibility and representation of people of color in science. Now, I'm black. So, yeah, I'm black. And one of the most interesting things that has happened to me is going to the USA, the United States of America. I have been told that I'm black at an HBCU and at a predominantly white institution. Both times by black men who were informing me that there were certain things that I was unable to do or not allowed to do because I was black. It's interesting to go to another country at the age of 22 and have someone inform you what your race is. So at the very least, that is challenging, right? And it's always been interesting to me that I have a totally different lived experience, or I had a totally different lived experience from my American counterparts or my cohort, where they had grown up in such a challenging society, and that what was expected of them was less. But I looked around at my own experience and I realized that a big part of my challenge was that it wasn't that I saw bad examples as a black man, or that anyone was telling me that black men cannot do something, but I didn't have an example to show me the pinnacle of what a black man could do. And as I was growing up, I know that my idols were like Steve Irwin, Crocodile Hunter, David Suzuki, David Attenborough, and I would see these dudes on TV, and they're going to strange places and they're finding wild animals and they're having all of these adventures, and I'm like, that's pretty cool. I wonder what can you do to be that or to do that. But there were no examples in the Bahamas for me. My first male science teacher was actually at the College of the Bahamas. So primary school, high school, all of my science teachers were black women, except for one, and that's my chemistry teacher in high school, Miss Mizik. So when I got to college and I started taking biology with chemistry, there wasn't any ecology class. If you were good in biology, you needed to be a doctor or a dentist, maybe a veterinarian on the outside. In the Bahamas, that was your limitations. And so yeah, I went through my biology with chemistry degree, and I was not feeling that drive, that passion. Like, I don't want to be inside a hospital all day. And I had still not seen in real life a real PhD in ecology or a real field biologist. Dr. Ethan Freed was my first botany teacher though, and he's a hardcore. So he's totally enthusiastic about his plants and stuff. And I could see that it was possible for him, but he's a white foreigner teaching at the College of the Bahamas. And there were some challenges with his approach to Bahamian culture, religion, stuff like that. So there were challenges with our interactions, understanding how you could be a scientist as well as being a Bahamian. But eventually I got to join the Kirtland's Warbler Research and Training Program. Eric Carey invited me to kind of interview for the program. And I went to the Botanical Gardens and I sat down with Eric Carey, who was managing the Botanical Gardens, and I had only ever seen him in an office, so I wasn't imagining him as a biologist or ecologist. And these two dudes come in, and it's Dr. Joe Wonderly and Dr. Dave Ewart. And they're white, older men, North American biologists. Joe has like the full beard thing going on. And I'm like, these dudes look legit. And they invite me to join this research program where they teach Bahamian students to actually do field biology. And I'm in the bush. I'm learning about birds and plants and how they interact with one another. And we're analyzing data and we're writing reports. And still, even when that program had finished after 2 years, I had not interacted with a black PhD field biologist, male or female, right? And even after that, I spent some time in the field, and they had an opportunity for us to go to the US. And we go up to Mayo, Michigan, and I'm picked up from the airport by Phil Huber, awesome dude. But I'd never seen him a day in my life. I don't know what the dude looked like or nothing. But picks me up from the airport, and it's a weird feeling to travel your first time by yourself, go to another country, and for like, I guess it was like a month, I didn't see anyone that looked like me, except for one black guy that worked inside the bank who helped me to get sorted out so that I could get paid. No one, like I didn't see any people of color, male or female. I definitely didn't see any black male biologists working in the Huron-Manistee National Forest. And in the Bahamas, it's very common for people to make a distinction or to identify a white person as specifically North American. If you look at our tourism advertisements, the actors and actresses inside those advertisements are white because we expect the tourists to be white. When we see on TV, like, we expect them to be white unless they're playing basketball or specifically on a black sitcom. And so I just assumed that that's what it was. If you're doing biology, or you're at that level in forestry or any type of science, like it was a white person's thing. And coming home, I got that. I'd gone off and I'd gotten all this perspective on how you can do better, understand the world, research things, make informed decisions. And when you come back, when that type of thing comes out of your mouth, you're asked, you think you whitey? There's a problem with that. Soccer. So So yeah, I go through the Kirtland's project, and one of the things that stuck out to me afterward was that I'd gotten to cross into Narnia, but then when I came back, everything went back to being the same. They didn't give me a pair of binoculars. Even the field guide, I had to leave with the project so that the next student could use it. And so while I might have internalized this experience of being a biologist for a few years, I was not really able to keep doing that. I was not able to go out and look at birds or further my knowledge on my own. So it was like I was given all of this, my eyes were opened, but then there were no books for me to read, kind of. Eventually I met Dr. James Wiley, and he offered me a scholarship to go to University of Maryland Eastern Shore. So I'm at a HBCU now, brought there again by an older white man who picks me up from the airport, and I had seen him for maybe 30 minutes 2 weeks before, when he offered me this scholarship and had me fill out some school papers. My mom scrounged together some money, and we didn't have the money, so basically they could afford the plane ticket, and my mom got a jacket from me, and I don't even know where she got the money or where she got the jacket from. It was basically a fleece-lined windbreaker. And if you Bahamian and you go into the States, no, that is not gonna cut it if you anywhere up in the northern part of the States. But that was what I had, and I remember Dr. Wiley asked me if that's all I had. I had a backpack and a small like carry-on luggage. Like, I didn't even know what, like, I had no idea what I had gotten myself into. He basically said, have you ever thought of, doing your bachelor's? I'm like, yeah, but I never had the chance. Like, I didn't have money for that. And he said, so if you got the opportunity, would you do it? I'm like, yeah, like what kind of question is that? So he had me fill out the stuff, and I went up there. I did my bachelor's in like a year and a half, 2 years, because I thought that the 4-year scholarship, if I finished it quicker, I would be able to let another Bahamian student get that money. That's kind of innocent, right? Like, I'm looking back and I'm like, that was so genuine and naive of me. Like, not having been in English-speaking North American academia, where the funding is you spend it or you lose it, and you spend it all or you don't get as much next time. And so I just pushed it out. And then for my master's, I got the Marine, Estuarine, and Environmental Science Fellowship. I worked with Dr. Madhumi Mitra and Dr. Abhijit Nagchaudhuri. And I was working with PhDs of color for the first time. And I was able to talk to them about issues like cultural differences, like knowing so many people and never being invited to eat at their place. Working with people who could hear you speak in your dialect and absolutely not recognize it as English. I always speak in English. This ain't no different language or nothing like that. I'm speaking English. But if I'm on the phone with my brother, I slip into the more comfortable speech of Bahamianese. And it was amazing to have that experience for the first time. One of the worst things that happened to me while I was at UMES, there was a white professor teaching calculus. And the way he taught calculus was difficult for me. I'm a very visual learner, so I can see what you do on the board, and when it comes time for me to do a similar question, I can fairly well repeat the process, and I can learn like that. I also go through all the questions in the book, but there was just so much that was missing in his delivery, and so I dropped the class to take it with another professor. And I had mentioned to one of my faculty members that his teaching style did not match my learning style, and that's why I had to drop it. He confronted me at a conference in front of a young undergraduate student while I was driving the vehicle to bring the students there. And he tells me that his wife is a judge and he'd get another PhD before I got my first one. And I am the first in my family to get a bachelor's degree. I'm the first in my family to go and pursue a master's degree. We don't have like just loose money or nothing like that, you know. So it isn't like if I fail at this, I go back home and work in my dad's business, or, you know, move into my mom's grand house, or they have a car for me to drive. Nothing like that. And I was comfortable enough to go back to my advisor, Dr. Mitra, and tell her what happened. That's a challenge if you don't have someone that looks like you, that has experiences like you, and that can relate. So I can't imagine how many other students might have gone through something similar with that professor or another professor, but just not have that type of support system, you know? But they gave me the option to kind of like pursue some penalization against him. I'd recently been told that I'm black and I can't get away with stuff in the States. Of course, he told me his wife is a judge and I'd never get a PhD or I'd never get a master's. I'm a foreigner. I'm not even American. So I didn't pursue anything. I didn't go after that because it wasn't worth it. I graduated with my bachelor's 3.987. I almost had a 4.0. I came home with the master's degree and I thought I was going to change the world, right? It's innocent, right? Um, I worked for an international conservation organization. During that time, I led national campaigns. I represented the organization and Bahamians on these different task forces and committees. I was able to start the first coral nurseries in the Bahamas because of the experiences that I had with international scientists who were doing these really cool things, and I got to learn from them and interact with them. And because I had the vocabulary to speak and to ask the right questions, we could get these things going. I wrote the letter to invite Prince Khalid bin Sultan's Living Ocean Foundation to start the Global Reef Expedition in the Bahamas. And I wrote to the marketing team that I think it would be really cool to use the photos that I'm always taking along with some of my writing to show the perspective that I have as a Bahamian on this expedition and what that means to me to see this world, to be able to protect it in a novel way. And that was shut down despite coordinating the first team of just young Bahamians. When you realize that these are students who are so amazingly talented and able, and they have these great experiences and this ability to contribute, but they're bartending or they're bussing tables, and they don't have access to these science opportunities, and you get the opportunity to put them on this trip, and you want people to know about what's going on and how cool it is, and that there's someone like you doing this and you could be there as well. But that was shut down. The next field portion, the next field experience portion, an older white man joined the team and basically did what I had proposed to do. And along with that, there was the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. And we went out there and we looked at the beauty of our Key Sal Bank in the Bahamas, and this oil was threatening to destroy our country, and we had to call in foreign experts to just look at it and to lead the research. And I got the opportunity to be on the terrestrial and marine part because I was certified in these coral and fish assessments, as well as the terrestrial experience with birds and plants. And there's nothing, I don't care where you come from, you can't tell me no different. There's nothing as beautiful as the Key Sal Bank. But at the end of the day, when I came out of my mouth and I started speaking out against the government for allowing oil drilling, I got in big trouble. So again, I didn't feel that there was a Bahamian PhD ecologist who could stand up and say, this is what I know, this is what's right, this is what's true, and this is what's wrong with what's going on. and we need to fix it. And the conversation was being led by uninformed or politicians that are not educated in the sciences. And so that became a real challenge. I said, bump this, I'm going to go and get my PhD. My wife Alma and I, we left and we found the Project Dragonfly field program, but in calling we found out that it was only a master's program and they didn't have a PhD. But I connected with Dr. Hayes Cummins, and he told me about the EEB program at Miami University, and that was awesome. So we went up there. So yeah, get a scholarship. Here's the thing. The Gerace Foundation Scholarship started by Don Gerace, and when I applied for it, they were not going to give it to me because I was going for the PhD, and it was only allowed for bachelor's and master's students. And Don Gerace actually called and told them to give it to me after hearing from Hayes and Eric Carey and Casuarina McKinney-Lambert. And this is someone who I had never seen before in my life. I'd studied at the Gerace Field Station. I taught classes at the Gerace Field Station before, but I'd never seen him. But he was like, yeah, if there's a Bahamian who wants to use this scholarship money to get a PhD, give it to him. But partway through my PhD, he passed away. And it just so happened that that was right before I needed to actually submit a renewal for my funding, because they had never given it to a PhD student. So it was just for 4 years. And long story short, I didn't get the funding renewed. So I'm looking around for funding. I'm scrapping and scrounging. I'm working 3 and sometimes 4 different little jobs around campus while doing my PhD, while organizing the graduate students of all nations to help support international students, while representing the biology department graduate students on the Web and Visibility Committee to help our biology department be more visible, while representing graduate students, international students, students of color, and biology students on the Graduate Student Council. And I lost my funding. And I had a son just born. And I got called into a meeting by one of the leaders of the program. And he closed door meeting, just he and I. And I'll never forget, he told me, you are not seen as a successful student. And at that point in time, like, you can't really describe what like goes through you. Again, I had not met any black PhDs on this campus. And when he tells me that, if you've ever seen me mad, like really upset, I kind of go super analytical. And so I said, who doesn't see me as successful? because that's really scientific, right? That's not a perspective thing. That's how they talk in articles. This was seen, this happened. It doesn't say I saw this or George and Frankie saw this. It says this was seen. So I said, who doesn't see me as a successful student? Or who doesn't see me as successful? And he says the committee. And I said, who's on this committee? I started with students who were still struggling to meet their requirements for different things. I had a table, I had a spreadsheet, and I was like, I have to hit this class, this class, this class. I have to pass this examination. I have to do this proposal. I had these things clocked out and marked off. And I said, why? Is it because I'm looking for funding now? Is it because you've never given me funding? And all of a sudden, there's the one black guy in the department looking for funding? I didn't say none of that to him. I was real upset. But I asked him who was on this committee, and he couldn't tell me. I asked him what the measures were that they were using, because I'd met all these requirements. I'd taken all my classes. I'd not dropped below the necessary grade point average. And from what I saw, every single one of the students that entered with me, that started with me, they were still there. And he had never had a meeting with me before that to ask me about my progress, to find out how I was getting funding. You see this dude walking around inside your building all the time, taking your classes, never have a conversation. So anyway, long story short, I got funding. And I made a big stink about it. Being told, especially in the science department, without like hard evidence, and while I was able to immediately find evidence against me being unsuccessful, comparative statistics. Basically, I'm here getting all my grades like it's laid out inside the handbook, and still 90% of my classmates are still here doing the same thing. So eventually I got funding. I got my PhD. Now I'm back. I'm back in the Bahamas. And this is Science and Perspective. I do have a different perspective from most PhDs that I've ever seen. I'm a black male Bahamian PhD, and Science and Perspective is here for any Bahamian student who wants to see an example of a Bahamian with a PhD. And that's why when you see me introduce myself, it's Dr. Ancelino Davis. This ain't easy. But anytime you see me, that's who I am, and that's who I represent. I'm representing every Bahamian student. You could do it, and I'm here to help. This was a long video, but I wanted y'all to know what happens. It's a challenge. You need representation, and you need to be able to see people that look like you. And we're here, and there's a lot of us now. So there's no excuse for you not to have that support. This is Dr. Anselino Davis, and that's been a lot of science and perspective. Love y'all. Be safe.